This is Keyed In with Max and Brent, unlocking the minds of the industry's top real estate professionals. And now, here are your hosts, Max Rabin and Brent Jackson.
Hey everybody, welcome to Keyed In Podcast. I'm your host, Max Rabin.
And I'm Brent Jackson.
Today, our guest is Dave DeSantis. Dave DeSantis has been a partner and managing broker with TTR Sotheby's International Realty since 2007. Before that, he was actually in the public sector, public service with the FTC. He worked with the Charles E. Smith companies here in D.C. And then another huge developer in D.C., PN Hoffman. He was the vice president of sales and marketing with PN Hoffman. PN Hoffman's one of the most well-known developers in this city. That one of their biggest projects was the Wharf, which everyone is now familiar with. That's like the marquee place in D.C. So that must have been quite an amazing business working with them. So welcome to the show, Dave.
Thank you. Thanks, guys, for having me on.
Thanks for coming out.
So you worked. I've known you for years. I didn't realize you worked for the FTC. So tell us about what
was that all about?
Yeah, what was that all about? And just talk about how you got started in that, and then transitioning into real estate.
Sure. Yeah. No. As a kid, I was really interested in politics and went to undergrad for public policy and thought maybe I wanted to be a member of Congress someday. Everybody glamorizes it so much. Maybe they don't anymore. I think probably in the current environment,
some must. I'm sure they do.
Very few people probably aspire to be members of Congress, but I did as a kid.
I want to pause you for 1 second, just for the uneducated listeners like myself here. What is FTC?
The FTC is the federal...
FTC.
Yes, Federal Trade Commission.
Okay, okay, FTC.
Which actually has nothing to do with trade,
right,
by the way, but we can talk about that in a minute.
Sure,
but,
yeah.
So, I went to undergrad. 3 days after graduation, I had a job down here on the Hill, packed up a U-Haul with my college roommate, and we got an apartment in Ballston. I think at that point, Ballston was very different than it is today. We were the only English-speaking people in our apartment building. And, there was the only thing over 3 stories in that part of Northern Virginia was the shopping mall. And you go there today, and it's just like its own city. So I worked on the Hill and for some public policy organizations. And then one of my mentors got appointed in the Clinton administration to the Federal Trade Commission. And he had been talking to me about public service, and he said, if you want to do this, you really should do it now before you get too jaded, or you're older, you need to make more money. And I said, well, you should put your money where your mouth is and hire me. So he called the White House political office, and I had a job the next day. So that was great. I learned a lot. The Federal Trade Commission, by the way, like I said, nothing really to do with trade. It is the chief consumer protection agency for the United States. So that has actually been helpful in my real estate career, but also is one of the 2 agencies in the federal government that negotiates mergers and manages antitrust and competition. So I learned a lot. I worked on the Exxon Mobil merger. Who would have thought, right?
Yeah.
And it was very interesting, but it became very clear after that second Clinton term and all that was going on then. You can certainly remember. Nowadays, impeachment seems like something that happens all the time. But back then, it was a big deal. And it just felt to me that politics was too nasty a career, and that I wasn't really in charge of my own destiny. So I decided I needed to do something where I was charting my own course, and had dinner one night with a friend who also now happens to be an agent at our firm, Matt McCormick, and asked Matt what I should do with the rest of my life. And he said, well...
How old are you at this point? How old are you at this point?
Let's see. I guess I was 30, right? I was around 30.
Okay.
30, 31.
Yeah.
And so Matt was working for the Smith companies at that point. And he said, well, we've got a job open here. I know you don't really have any commercial real estate experience, but you're a good negotiator. You've obviously been at the top of the federal government. It's not like anybody's going to question your qualifications. Just come interview with Mr. Smith, and if he likes you, maybe, you'll get the job. So I did, and they hired me, and that was that.
Yeah.
I gave it no more thought than that, other than this seems like an interesting path to go down. And so one commercial real estate job led to another commercial real estate job at PN Hoffman.
Yeah.
And here we are.
There you go.
How are your days at Hoffman? Because as Max mentioned, I mean, he's one of the better developers in the city. He doesn't do small projects. He's doing large projects on a large scale, even from, I don't know if he was one of the forefront developers that reshaped the 14th Street corridor from 1133 14th Street to Alta, all the way up to 2125 14th Street, which is Union Row.
Well, he had really just undertaken that when I started working there. He had just made the transition from kind of smaller projects to doing that big turnaround of 14th Street and some of the other ambitious projects that they were doing. And I was really taken with his vision for the city. It seemed like, okay, this is a guy who really loves Washington, D.C. and has a vision for how it can become a world-class city. So, again, it was one of those strange situations where they didn't have a job open. I asked for an informational interview, and I said, I'm really taken with your vision for the city, and if you ever have a job opening that I would be qualified for, I would love to work with you. And one thing led to another, and there you go.
What's the time frame for this? Is this like late 90s roughly, or when?
Yeah, let's think. I worked at Hoffman from 2003 to 2007.
Okay, because when I first started in real estate, it was around 2000, and I had already seen a few PN Hoffman projects even back then, like smaller projects here and there.
Yeah, I think one of the first ones that I worked on, and frankly, it may have been, Max, where I met you, was the Alta at 1133 14th Street. And I remember it very well because it was one of the first projects, one of the first major condo projects in the city where you had that crazy kind of buzz when it sold. I remember we did a launch party at the Washington Plaza Hotel, and we had a line 3 blocks long to get into the party, and the condo, I think, was 110 units, sold out that night.
Wow.
And I'm pretty sure that you were there with clients, if I'm not mistaken.
I don't remember. If I was, it could be true. It could very well be true.
But we had a clipboard, and it was literally like taking orders.
Yeah.
And the market, even as crazy as the market is now, it has never been like that.
Okay.
Again.
This is great. This is the bridge, because I was just having this conversation with someone else about, we're talking about the market and where it is, and we see like lines at open houses right now for like fee simple houses in Chevy Chase, and there were lines at sales offices for new condos in that era in downtown DC. I remember like 400 Mass Avenue wasn't a PN Hoffman project, but like 400 Mass Avenue had a trailer set up like kind of outside the project. And I remember my friend who wanted to buy a unit down there, he went down there, he's like, yeah, there's a line down the block. And it's just like people just literally signing these contracts, like picking out their unit off a piece of paper. And that's how it was.
Well, that was really the beginning of condos as a market force in DC. I mean, DC for years has really been a very traditional single family home market. You guys know this as well as anybody. And even today, I think to a certain extent, people in DC, when they want to announce I have arrived, right, they're not aspiring to some 4-bedroom condo, even if it's super glamorous.
Right.
They want a house in Spring Valley with a yard and landscaping and that look and feel when you drive up. That's what people in Washington, D.C. are like. That's what makes us different than New York City, for example. But that really was an era. People had not been buying condos to a great extent until all of those projects started delivering, and it was the new shiny penny, and everybody had to have one, and not just to live in. I mean, I remember at PN Hoffman, we really had to clamp down on investors because we had a couple, 2 or 3 guys would come in there with their cousins and
They want to buy a block of units.
fathers, and they want to buy 10 units
Yeah.
in the building, and you just can't let people do that all the time.
Right.
So
All the time.
it was interesting negotiation. You clearly want to sell out the building, but
Yeah.
you're really trying to get people who want to live there.
Well, these developers are still dealing with that. They have people that come in early and they want to combine units, and most of these seasoned developers already have the experience to know that this is usually a problem.
Yeah.
So
The answer is no.
The answer is just straight up no. Yeah.
Well, I guess interesting, his vision, right? Because you just mentioned like the 14th Street corridor. And Max, you grew up here. It wasn't a thing in the early 2000s. I mean, it was an emerging neighborhood, Logan Circle. And seeing what he's done down at the wharf, again, you only had those old co-ops and the Fisher Market and all of that. He goes in there and develops a mini city within the wharf. So, I mean, his vision on what he can do with the neighborhood is transformative across the board.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to his credit, when I left PN Hoffman in 2007 to come to TTR, Sotheby's, we had been working on the wharf for years. I mean, literally the plans were in the office.
Mm-hmm.
And it really wasn't until, 10 years later that it ultimately came to fruition.
It took a long
It took
time.
a long, long time.
Well, it's a huge land assemblage and requires a lot of the government's assistance there. So, I mean, yes, that's a lot of work.
Well, and we also did have the biggest real estate crash in
True, right in the middle of all that.
Right.
modern history.
Yeah, it's like
so
maybe
there
put
was
this on the
that.
back burner for a minute.
Exactly.
Right. So, okay, so just, I guess, other questions related to working in a new condo sales world. Were you managing sales for specific buildings, or were you sort of overseeing all of the sales operations at Hoffman?
Yeah, I was in charge of all of the sales and marketing operations. So typically we had, 2 or 3 projects going at a time. And we would have members of the sales team working on each one. And I would be giving reports to Monty and the rest of the management team about how sales were going. And, I think it was great. It was actually great experience to have before coming to the residential resale environment, because as you can imagine, and you guys both know this because you work with developers as well, it instills a level of discipline that I think a lot of people in our profession don't have.
Sure.
Because, it's one thing when you're dealing with an individual seller and communicating with them. But when you are working for a developer who's got institutional investors and they need reports on spreadsheets every week, and they want to log every single call that came into the office, and they want detailed reports on the feedback from every lead, that's the kind of responsibility that then I think helps make you a better agent
For sure.
in any part of this business.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd say that you came from that world and moved into like the residential, more resale world, I guess. Going in reverse, I mean, that's where I started, was working in the resales. It's like just meeting a seller, listing a property, open houses, brochures. Maybe you get a buyer to talk to, and then talk about that with the seller. Market's a little different right now, but that's the way we started, right?
Yep.
Like, so when we work with a developer who has like 12 units to sell, yeah, you kind of have to relearn the wheel a little bit to keep up with them.
Well, and you guys know this, there are a number of people in our firm who get opportunities put in front of them to work with a developer, and they come in and see me because they know I have experience. Yeah. And one of the first things I tell them is, you really should think twice before you take this, because it will consume your existence.
For sure.
Right? I mean, this is not like listing and selling a house.
Right.
This is literally days and nights of spreadsheets and marketing reports and very detailed marketing plans, much greater extent than something that a typical seller is going to ask you to provide. And that means that you're going to have to put the rest of your career, meaning your resale career, on hold.
Yeah.
And that's what they don't realize. They see the promise of, I'm going to sell 15 units. This sounds great. They're adding up the commission. I'm like, yeah, but it's probably going to take you a year to do that. And in the meantime, you're really not going to be able to do a lot of resale business unless you're working with 3 or 4 other people. So It's tough. It's a tough part of the business.
Yeah.
So you're working on some big projects on the 14th Street corridor. Is Mr. Hoffman looking and reviewing over every single contract, or is that a decision that you're making? An offer comes in and it's like, this one's going to go, I'll sign off on it, or somebody inside the team signs off on it?
Monty was pretty reasonable about that. He gave us, the sales team, a reasonable amount of flexibility. If we had to, clearly if somebody was offering full price, we were at a point where the project was really hot. There wasn't really much to question, right? Sure. But we definitely had flexibility to accept contracts. I was the one who was signing the contracts.
So you were signing?
Yeah. If it was something that was way outside the band, or let's say we had a penthouse that we really wanted to get under contract because it would create momentum for the top level units, I would typically go to him and say, hey, can we take a haircut on this so that we can tell the 6 other leads that we've got for penthouse units that we put this one under contract. And he has a very good sense, not every developer does, but I think Monty has a very good sense of the types of incentives that salespeople need to offer to get other people to move.
Get them
right?
Motivated.
So he gets it.
And it still seems to be the same, even in today's time, that it's not a haircut on the price. You're getting a haircut indirectly on the incentives, whether it's blinds, new flooring, parking, closing credits, or whatnot. You're not getting 3 to 5% off on the sales price.
Oh, yeah. We would much prefer to give people perks like
Right.
that than to cut the price. Although, you cut the price if you have to. But
Right. The market will eventually take care of itself if it needs to. Right?
Exactly.
Okay. So some solid years there working with PN Hoffman. And then in 2007, you started working with TTR Sotheby's International Realty. Were you a partner right at when you joined the firm?
No, not really. It was kind of an amorphous situation. So you'll recall in 2007, that was before the major crash in real estate. But here in DC and other major markets, we were already feeling it in new construction condos, right? The market was clearly overbuilt. We had a lot of product. You could see that things had, starting in 2006, really slowed down. And the writing was on the wall,
Sure.
right? Any of us who were working in development in 2006, we knew something was coming. You could tell, you could feel it. So it was pretty clear that Hoffman was going to be in kind of suspended animation for a while.
Okay.
And at that point, I was very good personal friends with Michael Rankin, one of our founding partners. And so Michael and I got to talking, and I said, this is not going to be good. I think PN Hoffman's probably going to go quiet for a while, which they did, incidentally. I think we went from 75 staff to 7 during the recession.
Wow.
So it was, and again, kudos to Monty Hoffman for sticking it out and now creating a huge organization, much bigger than it was back then. Yeah. But Michael Rankin said, well, just come hang your real estate license at TTR until you figure out what you want to do with the rest of your life. And I worked with him for a bit, kind of partnering in his business, but it became clear that even in the middle of this recession, TTR was growing pretty quickly because people were leaving other brokerages to come to TTR because we had the Sotheby's affiliation and they felt that it was, the flight to quality, if you will. And so the brokerage grew quite a bit during that period, 2007, 2008, 2009. And we needed more management. So Michael and Jonathan at that point decided to invite me to become a partner, which I was very thrilled to accept and honored, I have to say. And it's been a great ride ever since. Yeah. We were not a very big company back then. I think we were, when I joined, 45 agents. So what are we, 10 times as big now?
Or more.
Or more.
Yeah, because at about that time, so when the market crashed, we had we only had two DC offices at the time, our company. And we consolidated to one DC office, like whatever agents wanted to work there. We all just kind of like piled into that one office in Georgetown.
That's right.
But then not long after that, that's when they opened the McLean office. So they took the opportunity to expand a little bit.
Yep.
And I don't know the inner workings of how they did it. At the time, I'm sure they were able to probably secure a lease at a discount and just sort of keep it rolling. But yeah, no, it was pretty impressive the way they made those decisions to start expanding, like during that, when a lot of other people would just be like, let's just get out of here.
Well, it was pretty gutsy, I have to say. And I don't know that we were all of a like mind on the decisions. I'm not going to single out partners, but there are some of us in the partnership, and there are 5 partners who own the firm, who are a little bit more aggressive on the risk side and others who are less so. And of course, the risk guys won out. And we said, oh, look, what the hell? We got to go for it. If you don't go for it now.
Well, if it's not now, then when?
Yeah,
right?
Exactly. So we took on some debt, which nobody was really happy about, but you got to do what you got to do. And it worked out okay.
Yes.
There have clearly been scary moments when it felt a little overwhelming, but I feel like if you want to grow a business, any business, if there are not days when you're feeling that feeling in the pit of your stomach, like, oh God, I don't know if this is the right choice, then you're probably playing a little too safe.
I would agree with that.
Yeah.
Sounds like the inner workings of some condo buildings. It's like you have the older regime that doesn't want to spend any of the money in the reserves. They want their common areas to look old and dated. You've got the new blood coming in, and they want to come in and freshen up everything and modernize it and increase the prices and not worry about reserves.
Everyone has different risk tolerance.
Yes.
And that's human nature, right? Which leads me to this is a whole different thought, and maybe we'll edit this out. I don't even know. But last night, I was texting you about Florida real estate. And I was looking on Redfin at a couple condos in Delray Beach, Florida. And I'm just looking at this condo and I'm going like, this is a very nice condo. And my girlfriend and I are looking at this and I'm just like, I don't have time to get down there or ever look at this. I didn't buy the condo, by the way, I'm just saying. But I'm just looking at this and I'm going, this is like the way our market works right now. I mean, people are really people are buying real estate at a just crazy kind of pace right now. I'm not saying everything sells immediately, but it's pretty intense. It's just our market has evolved into, think about like the stock market, for example. Think about, Robinhood and all the other big brokerages and how people trade securities, right? It's like immediate, it's low to no fees, and it's moving at an extremely rapid pace, like instantaneous. The real estate market has kind of evolved into that as well, to some degree,
Sure.
Especially with the increase in values and the speed at which these properties are moving in some of our markets. I'm interested to hear what you think about that, because you've been in the market as long as I've been in it, and you've done many hundreds of millions in sales, with the new condos and then everything else. Like, what do you think of the evolution as to what the market has become?
Well, it's funny that you bring this up, because I was telling Brent in the car on the way over here that I bought a new house in California last week.
Okay.
And which we can talk about in a minute. But I agree with you. I think that, I don't know whether it's that people have a greater sense of comfort with the idea of buying real estate, or that they view real estate differently now than they used to. I think in my parents' generation, you bought a house because you needed a place to live.
Sure.
And sure, it was an investment, but you're an adult. You grow up, you have kids, you buy a house, the kids grow up in the house, you sell it, you move to something, you move to Florida.
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Life is over, right? It was a very clear and well-defined path. I think that we have now objectified real estate in a way that we didn't before. I mean, you see it all the time with HGTV and $1 Million Listing. Right. And so exactly, real estate porn, right?
Yes.
I mean, people just sit in bed at night and look at real estate on their iPad. Everyone aspires to own real estate, fancier real estate than the real estate that they're in. And so I think that is part of what is driving the market. We have a much greater investment market in real estate than we used to. I mean, even wealthy people who owned 10 homes 40 years ago, nobody.
I mean,
now people
yeah.
pick up houses like they would buy a watch or a pen.
I hear a lot of stories like that.
Incredible.
I was at a condo yesterday shooting a video, and I heard that the seller of that condo literally had bought the house that he was moving into, just like drove by it and said, "Oh, that looks like a nice place," and then just bought it, like $10 million house. And so this is like,
that's crazy.
That's the pace of the market. Even at that level, people are doing these kinds of things.
Sure. Well, I mean, I see it in California. I think you guys know this.
Palm Springs.
Yeah, right now we have a condo in Palm Springs, and we have for, almost 10 years, 9 years now, because we really like the desert.
Mm-hmm.
And
why don't you you're sharing with us why Palm Springs is because of the desert versus what I heard a few minutes ago, you go to Florida to die.
Right.
Yeah. So don't go to Florida, Max.
People go to Palm Springs to die too. Don't get me wrong. Right. Dinner service starts at 4 in Palm Springs.
That sounds great.
So it's
in bed by 7. That's perfect for me.
Exactly. Me too. Right. Like I get up at 5 in the morning, so it's just fine for me. But we've been casually looking for a while. But again, it was one of those things. I was out there for a couple days, and a house came up for sale in a development that we have been looking at, sort of aspired to have a place in for a long time. Is the house perfect? No, it needs some work, but things come up so infrequently. Yeah. It was a very quick decision. I'm sure a lot of people would say that we were crazy to just, plunk down a couple $1 million on a whim.
But are you? I mean, it's like, this is your life. I mean,
no. And the other thing that I will say is, and I really do believe this, although I know it sounds like real estate BS, the law of scarcity, it can't be argued with, right?
Right.
There's only so much real estate, and there's even less real estate in desirable places where people want to spend time. And in the case of this particular house, it's in a great development in a gated community with an amazing country club, and it's where people want to be.
Yeah.
So if something comes up, the market's crazy right now, but my guess is 10 years from now, it's going to be even crazier.
Yeah, it's a limited location. That's what I think about, like when we talk about the Florida stuff. I'm looking at these places that are on the coast. I mean, they're like one row off the beach. There's only so much of that.
I should have told you the story about the one that came on last night. I was telling them in the car ride. So it came on the market. The guy paid $750, 4 renovated units, right on the Gulf Stream for $450,000. I'm like, why would he shave $300,000 off? I called the agent. I'm like, hey, write up an offer. Let's do it all cash, close in 2 weeks. He wrote it up. I docu-signed it this morning. Mm-hmm. And then when he sent it over to the agent, he was like, oh, we forgot a zero on the number. And I'm like, oh, it's $4.5 million, which makes a lot more sense. Like, I'm not paying $4.5 million down there. But I mean, just like an agent forgets a zero, that's insane. But I like to hear more about like the
Come on, Brent, go for it. It's on the beach. It's not going to be any
exactly.
Next year it'll be $6 million.
Yeah, it probably will down there.
I mean, yes, like that's what you were talking about, like the real estate over there. And that's what I was looking at. I'm looking at like some Zillow stuff in southern Florida, and it's like purchased 2 years ago for $750, Zestimate $950, and like you confirm that. I mean, that's
correct. Yeah, it's insane down there.
I mean, that's kind of like here too, but
there is the project that we bought in like won over. It went under contract in like 48 hours, and it was 1.4, and it's the identical unit that we paid $750 for 6 months ago. And then my friend paid $500,000 like 6 months before we got in. I mean, Florida is just insane, and I'm sure. I mean, can you tell us about the story of like the California? Were the only buyer? Did you waive home inspections? Like, how did that?
Yeah,
sure. No, there were multiple offers. I mean, the house was originally listed for 2.1. After being on the market for 24 hours, they actually raised the price to 2.2, which, as you guys know, we don't do that often. Even when you've got a lot of demand, the idea that you're going to raise the price is pretty gutsy. Needless to say, I was offended, but not offended enough to not offer. No, it did not go to $4 million, but it went to 2.5, and you do what you have to do. But I will tell you, a good coat of paint and $100,000 in renovations, and that's a $3.5 million house.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
What are the
So-
logistics like getting over there? So for us to get to Florida, we'll fly into Fort Lauderdale out of JetBlue. It's a very easy 2.5 hour flight. What's the logistics to get over to California?
It's longer. People think we're crazy. They're like, your weekend house is in California? I'm like, yes, I like to get away. I mean, I love DC.
It's very much get away.
But when I want to be away, I want to be away. So you have to connect somewhere. You know, you fly out of DCA and you connect in Houston or Dallas or something. But I read a book, I do some work on the plane, and then you're there.
Yeah, really.
So it's not a big deal. But
Not real estate related, but what would you rather do? Fly out of Dulles and go direct if you can versus like DCA to connect in Houston, Chicago or somewhere and then to California?
Well, I mean, I'd love to have a direct flight. In fact, I read an article last week that said that Palm Springs is trying to push for nonstop flights from, I think they said DC, Boston, and I can't imagine where else. They've got one from New York.
I'm sure for all the people who love visiting there, that's great. But the people who really are like in Palm Springs, like, please don't do this.
More people.
Yeah.
But it is. It's a lot like Florida in that way. It has become a destination, right? I mean, you've got Coachella and Modernism Week and some of the other things that happen there, but it has become a place where, I mean, lots of people from LA go there for the weekend, people from Seattle. Houses are just turning like crazy. And for a long time, Palm Springs was dormant. You know, it was hot in the 50s and 60s with the crowd from Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
And then it became this kind of dumpy retirement community in the desert. And now it's become hot again. And who knows? You know, I mean, it could go back again. I don't know.
Learn to play bridge.
Yeah, I guess I'll have to.
But I think that's what he wants to do anyway.
Right.
You know? I mean, that's really what we're all going to be doing at some points. Let's just be honest.
Shuffleboard.
Pickleball.
You know, no, never.
I'm telling you, pickleball is the hot thing.
I'm well aware. It's like my arch nemesis is pickleballers. That's another story. Well, we got way off topic, although I knew Palm Springs was going to come up anyway in this conversation because that's actually it's fascinated me because you're the only person I know who, like, I know plenty of people who go back and forth to Palm Beach and Florida, but you go to Palm Springs, so I think that's pretty interesting.
Well, you know, there is another agent in our firm who owns a place 2 doors down from us.
Oh.
So,
okay, got it.
I'm not the only one.
So do you have, with our global connections here at Sotheby's International Realty, do you have ever thought about getting your licensed in California, or do you have like a go-to team, or do you have like people that are coming to you all the time since you live there? Like, hey, I'm thinking about selling my house. I'm looking to buy.
Well, I actually did get a license in California.
Okay.
For a while I thought, okay, I'm going to do business in both places. And of course, it's really impossible to do that. Right? A lot of people have this vision, like I'm going to live in DC and Florida and work in both places, but you can't become an expert in 2 markets and give your attention to 2 markets in a way that makes sense like that. So I've got a license, but I'm actually affiliated with our office in Beverly Hills and with a team run by a guy named Eric Levy, who's one of our top agents in California, and who's also a good friend of mine. And he and his wife also have a place in Palm Springs. So Eric is the one that wrote the contract for this. I didn't write it under my own license. But, you know, someday if I'm out there more, if I'm semi-retired from TTR, sure, why not?
Sounds good to me. All right, but let's get back to working in DC.
Oh yeah, DC, that's
in the
right.
real estate business. So, okay. So now you're a managing partner here at TTR. What are your, but you also are on a sales team. You still do sales.
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
So, but tell us about like day-to-day life as a broker. Like, are you managing other agents and their issues every day? Tell us like what a day-to-day is like for Dave DeSantis.
Yeah, I mean, I still sell, but I have a team of 5 agents who thankfully do most of the heavy lifting, and they are amazing, and they're all people that have been at our firm for a while. And so that frees me up to do my day job, which is ostensibly to manage and mentor agents in our firm. And yeah, it's, you know, I mean, it's everything from I'm having trouble getting a hold of the marketing department to I've got a client that wants to fire me because the house hasn't sold in 5 days.
Right.
So it's part amateur psychiatry, it's part mentorship, it's part being, the telephone operator for the company to connect people with who they should be connected with. Being a broker it can be fun. I find it very rewarding, frankly, because I think it's great to see people grow and succeed in their career. And it's something that I and the other partners at TTR feel strongly about, that's our job, right? If we're not helping people grow their business, then how are we adding value? We constantly have to add value to what the agents are doing themselves. So you have to be available 24 hours a day.
What do you say to I've noticed that, at least it seems like, I'm looking at our social media feed, we brought a lot of new talent into the company recently. Are you handling some of this new talent and helping these people get started, or what are you doing with the newest agents in the company right now?
I'm fairly involved in that. Yeah, I think it depends. We obviously have 11 offices now. So the individual brokers in those offices are on the front lines of working with anybody who might come into that office. But at the company level, we've spent a good amount of time over the last 3 or 4 years creating a professional development program, a coaching program. I've been very involved in that. I think it's incredibly important. And although we have hired a few people that are new to the business, as you guys know, most of the people that join TTR are coming from another brokerage.
Right.
So it's really not so much about teaching them how to sell real estate as it is teaching them how we sell real estate and the things that are important to us and our vision for the brand. And people do things very differently at other brokerages, as I have discovered. So there is a good amount of coaching involved to get people on the right course.
Right.
What's more important to you as a person and as a partner? Agent retention or agent growth? Meaning agent growth, bringing agents from outside the firm.
Absolutely retention.
Retention.
Yeah, it frankly guts me when somebody leaves the firm. And one of the other partners, who is very wise, has counseled me not to take it personally, because it's that type of business, right? People come and go, and they change brokerages, and their priorities change. But I can't help but take it personally. We try to run this company like a family, even though it's become much bigger. And I'm always questioning, okay, what did we do wrong that we didn't make it compelling enough for this person to stay at this brokerage? And, sometimes there's nothing you can do, right? And frankly, sometimes maybe it's a good thing. But yeah, retention is much more important than growth. And, clearly we have grown exponentially, but I don't see us growing significantly more, certainly in terms of headcount in every office. I don't want to be in a situation that some of our competitors are in, where we're asking managers and brokers to support 150, 200, 250 agents. I don't think you can do that effectively. I think you have to be available. And if you've got 200 people calling you asking for advice, you're never going to be able to get back to them in a timely way. It's just impossible. So I would rather have the team we've got and find a way to grow everybody's business by 100%, right? That would be great. That's my dream.
I've got another tough question for you here. You have 3 hats. You have ownership hat, you have managing hat, and you have an agent hat. Out of all 3 hats, which do you enjoy as a person doing the most? You can only pick one.
Ooh, I can only pick one.
That wasn't on the question list.
No, it wasn't on the question
way
list.
Off script.
Okay, no, I think the managing hat is probably the most fulfilling, which is not to say that I love doing deals, right? I mean, that's the reason we're in this business. Is if you didn't love doing deals, you wouldn't be in real estate. But I think the thing that is the most personally fulfilling when you go home at the end of the day is helping one of my colleagues, one of you guys, solve a problem and create a success. I mean, to me, that feels like, okay, there's an achievement for the day. So
Good answer.
Yeah. Well, I never have any problems, so you don't need to help
You're
me.
perfect.
no, that's right. You never,
You know.
it's like you never call, you never write.
No, but I work with Jonathan,
Yeah,
so it's like
exactly.
it's like the hotline.
Yeah, you poke the bear over there.
You know? So if you find that to be the most rewarding, here's a thought on the selling side. This is a question that I know that other agents think about, and inside the company, outside the company, you're in a position of like, you're at the near top of the company. So, and you're a very well-known person. Obviously, you've been in the business a long time. How you obviously you must get a lot of calls to do personal business. People want to work with Dave DeSantis. Like, how do you decide what business to take? You're very spread out now. Like, who are the clients that you end up working with?
Well, ironically, I probably get fewer calls than you think, because I think there are a lot of people out there. I would say I have a fairly wide social circle. Some portion of them think, oh, that Dave DeSantis, he's one of the owners of TTR. He doesn't need my business. I'm going to call some other agent. So they don't call me. And then
hey,
you've got another group who feel like that my business isn't, that I wouldn't be interested in their business, right? Because they're selling a $400,000 condo. So what does Dave DeSantis want to do with this? I feel like I have just as much business as I want. I don't really personally market myself. You're not going to see a postcard with Dave DeSantis's face on it
Dave
go
DeSantis
to
TikTok
2,500 households in DC. And there's nothing wrong with that, but the choice that I have made, because I do wear three hats, is when business comes and it's the right business, I'll take it. And otherwise, I've got other stuff to do.
Yeah.
And I also have a team. And I also have, 60 agents in our downtown office and several hundred agents across the rest of the firm. And if business comes to me and I don't feel like I want to take it, I'll pick up the phone and give it to somebody else in the firm.
Right. Yeah. I think you have actually really solid reputation in that regard, that like when I see your name on something, like everything makes sense. There's nothing bizarre or out of place, right? Like the types of listings, like the way it's presented. I don't feel like the competition is too steep. You know what I mean? And
I will say that I do, for good or bad, seem to attract some peculiar business, right? Like, farms out in the country that
didn't you have something like
other people don't want to sell, or challenging clients that other people don't want to work with. And I don't know, maybe it's because I'm a manager, that I'm a fixer, right? Like I want to go in and fix things.
Yeah.
So then I take on these clients, and I had a fairly challenging transaction just settle, and when I got the listing, another one of our agents called and said, wow, you get all of the difficult ones, because apparently this seller was known to other agents. But you know what? It worked out just fine. Was it easy? No. But that's what makes it more fulfilling, right? To take a difficult one and get it across the finish line.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody can take a hot listing that gets 25 offers in 48 hours. But, that's to go off topic a little bit. I think that's going to be the interesting thing for all of us, to see how this business goes, because it's not going to be hot forever, right? Whether it's later this year or next year or the year after, there's going to be a correction. And so many people have gotten into our business. And so many of the people, even very good agents in our firm and other firms, have only worked in an up market.
Right.
And so it's going to be interesting to see what happens when they have to work in a down market. And you guys have both been there, so how this goes. But there are a lot of people out there that we work with every day who are going to freak out.
Right. Right.
I came in a down market, which worked to my benefit because you're coming in when appraisers, lenders, title companies, agents are all getting out of the industry.
Yeah.
So it's like you're learning to sink or swim. And fortunately for me, I'm workaholic, so I've been able to make do in a down market. And then it's a fruitful tree right now with the market being as hot as it is.
Well, I was really, really drunk during most of the downturn, so that seemed.
You don't remember the downturn?
Yeah, I don't remember.
Maybe that's better.
Right. But I think
it was not a pleasant experience. You may recall that our 2008 holiday party for the company was 2 bottles of Chardonnay and crackers in the Georgetown office.
Yeah, I do remember that.
I'll never live that one down.
Yeah,
but needless to say,
BYO Christmas party. My thought on all that, though, in terms of markets, is I do a lot of stock market stuff, and I've been doing it for a while, and I have one of my oldest friends. I got him into investing actually over the last 3 years. And obviously what happened in the last 3 years was the pandemic. Everyone's like, oh my God, but everyone literally thought they were going to die. So it's not just, they don't feel like I'm going to die, like in terms of my money, like literally felt. So it's like with the market cascading and everyone like kind of like shutting themselves in, it's that freak out moment. And I just told him, I said, it's a bear market. I said, it's like, it'll pass. Maybe we'll die. I don't know. Like that's like, we'll have to see. I said, but in terms of the markets, I mean, you have to just like relax, and it's the same thing in real estate. You just have to, just everything plays out the way it's going to play out. You never really can predict or
see. You're braver than I am, though. The stock market has always intimidated me. I like to think I'm a fairly sophisticated business person, but that is, and which is not to say I certainly own some stock, but to me that feels much more scary and amorphous, right? Because it's a piece of paper that represents something,
ones and zeros
a share
on the screen
of something. At the end of the day, with real estate, good market, bad market, you still got the house, right? You got that plot of land. There's something you can touch. You can put your hands in it.
These things go hand in hand to me. But I think, like, I don't know. I don't need to get into all that. But I will say, real estate as a traditional thing and where to put your money, obviously, is a great thing to do. There's no question about that. And then you talk about the scarcity aspect of it, especially in these markets that are the most popular. You can't argue with that.
Yeah.
That's
exactly.
The market will do whatever it's going to do, interest rates, inflation, everything else. But the land and the property, that remains.
So going back earlier, you said 2006, you saw the writing on the wall. So you guys saw something on the development team at Hoffman where there was units being built, overdeveloped, interest rates going with 100%. I think you could do 110% financing. So you had foresight back in 2006. Like, what would you see now that would cause the market to shift?
Well, it's interesting. I typically think that when you have a huge portion of the market becoming just investors, that you need to be concerned, right? Because then it no longer is somebody buying real estate to use it. It's just they're buying a piece of paper to flip. Right? Mm-hmm. They're never going to live in that house or condo. I don't think that, we certainly are there in some markets. I don't think that we're there in this market. And I think the difference between, let's say, 2006, 2007 and now is inventory, right? We were getting to the point where people were building like crazy. Even in the single family market, people were throwing their house on the market. They didn't care. And people were buying it, right? In 2005, buyers would buy any house. Oh, they had a fire last week. Oh, it doesn't matter. 30 offers. Yeah. Buyers are, I find, and you probably agree with me, much more selective now. Because even in a hot market like we have currently, there are houses that sit, right? We've seen them.
Sure.
It's either they're priced incorrectly or there's something really wrong with the house, with the way it's laid out. The floor plan is terrible. The location is just bad. Things still do sit, and we have so much less inventory now than we did back then. that was the signal to me, is we were building like crazy. We were opening buildings and we weren't having those parties anymore, right? Because you weren't going to get the line around the block. It was harder to get people to come in. You were offering concessions, and we had the crazy financing where anybody could buy anything with no money down.
Yep.
Thankfully, we don't have that situation
Right.
like we did. I hope we never go back to no doc loans. I mean, that was just the biggest disaster ever.
I got to utilize it firsthand, and it was really easy. And I like what I was doing made sense for me. But I was like, never crossed my mind. I'm getting too young and stupid, I guess, at the time. Never crossed my mind that like if I'm doing this, if I'm borrowing money at like 100 to 105% for just some random condo, then that means this is being replicated everywhere.
Oh, yeah. Well, funny story. What really set it off in my mind personally is that my partner's grandmother called us one day and said, I want to invest in a condo. So I want you guys to buy me an investment condo. And I thought, okay, when your grandmother wants to get into the investment business, you know it's time to get out.
It's like,
right?
That's like the big short moment.
And we did. We bought her a condo, and sure enough, the market crashed shortly thereafter.
Right.
So,
yeah.
Are they still in speaking terms?
well, she has unfortunately passed on. But the condo's worth a lot more now than it was back then.
Well, yeah.
So
it came around.
yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
All right. Well, I mean, Dave, you said it all. You know, you give us a lot here.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I like being here with you guys.
You want to hit on some rapid fire?
Rapid five.
Oh,
Ready?
okay. Here we go.
What is your guilty pleasure?
Whew, guilty pleasure. You know what? Hanging out at the beach. I love the beach. Even though I have a house in the desert,
wait a minute.
I love going to the beach.
Okay, yeah. So the
Where is
beach.
the
I don't
beach?
want to own a house on the beach.
Okay.
I'm afraid the beach is not going to be there in 10 years. That's my worry
That's an
about
interesting
owning real
thought.
estate on
Brent,
the
we
beach.
didn't think about that.
Yes, but well, he lives in a desert.
Yeah, far
There's no
away
water.
from the ocean.
Well, you know, maybe by the time I retire, it's going to be
It'll be
beachfront
there.
property.
Right.
I don't know.
He was forward thinking on that front.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right.
What book are you reading, or what's your favorite book that you would recommend to our listeners?
Book I am, well, there are a lot of real estate books, but actually, I think sort of timely right now, I just finished a book called In the Garden of Beasts, which is a fascinating book about the guy who was our ambassador to Germany right before World War II. So he and his family moved to Berlin in like 1933, and it's the story of them living in Berlin and kind of seeing how fascism takes over everyday life slowly. And, you know, given what's happening in the world right now, it seems particularly relevant and kind of scary to read, but it's a fascinating book. I would recommend it to anybody.
Nice.
Very good. What's your favorite TV show?
TV. I hate TV. I really do. Let's think. Favorite TV show. You know, I don't.
You don't have one?
I honestly
Wow.
don't have one.
That's impressive. No Netflix, no Hulu, or any of that
It's
stuff.
not to say I don't watch it, but I don't get obsessed with shows. You know, I have nothing to. People
I
keep
get it.
coming in and saying, "Are you watching this? Are you watching that?" I'm like, no,
Like, no.
sorry.
So you
Can't
didn't
help you.
watch The Slap Heard Round the World?
Oh, I
Sunday
did
night?
watch the slap
Oh,
heard
that's impossible
around the
to
world.
miss.
Yes, I did.
That'll
That
be safe
was-
for another podcast, which was
I was going to
absolutely
say,
crazy.
I'm sure we could talk
Yeah.
about
But
that
I just,
for
I
half
feel,
an hour. But
yeah, but I feel like that just happened. Like we're recording this right after that happened. By the time this even comes on, like the podcast, people will have forgotten. Like they forget everything these
Yes.
days so quickly. So.
exactly.
Snapshot.
Moving on.
Mhm.
So what are your hobbies?
Hobbies. Let's see. Well, I mean, in the desert, we love to hike. I would love to play tennis. I used to, but I've got a bad shoulder, so I need to get that fixed before I can play
Pickleball.
tennis again. I can play pickleball.
There you go.
Exactly.
Or switch
there you go.
hands.
Mhm.
So, oh God, trying to learn to play tennis
Yeah.
left-handed,
No,
that
forget
would
that.
not be good. I do read a lot. That's probably it. I mean, you know, my life is like your life. Who
Yeah.
has time for a lot
You
of
have 30
hobbies?
minutes a
there's,
day.
There's not
Go.
that much.
True.
So last question here. We're finishing up the first quarter of 22. Do you have any predictions for the rest of the calendar year?
Yeah, I think this year is going to be a great year for real estate in the United States. I'm not sure that it's going to last forever, but I certainly think that 2022 is going to be a good year. It'll be interesting to see how interest rates impact things. It's certainly going to have more of an impact on the lower end of the market, the first-time buyers. But, of course, we are very fortunate at TTR Sotheby's that we've got a lot of clients on the high end. And, I don't think that our clients really are going to feel a lot of impact from interest rates going from 3 to 5%, particularly given that some of them, at least some of them, have lived through much higher interest rates. Mm-hmm. And let's face it, even in a down market, real estate sells. Even when interest rates are 10%, real estate sells. Less sells, but that's why you work with people who are the best at what they do. Right? And there will always be plenty of business for those people.
One thing we didn't talk about was you're a really charitable guy with your time and your money. You sit on a couple boards, and we also like to give a donation in your name and all of our names to the charity of your choice. So who are we supporting today?
Ooh, tough call, because you're right. I do sit on a couple boards.
You can name them all.
Okay, well, so the charities that are closest to my heart here locally, I would say Sitar Center for the Arts, which is a great organization for kids. The Rock Creek Conservancy. I don't think I need to describe why Rock Creek is so great and such a wonderful part of our city. And believe it or not, I don't think anybody looking at me would think this initially, but I'm on the board of the Washington Ballet. Needless to say, I have never been a dancer.
You don't have to be a dancer to support.
No, but it's a great organization, and it's actually been a fascinating board to work on, because running an arts business is much harder than running a real estate brokerage. Yeah. So it's been a lot of fun and challenging, and I feel strongly about the organization. So yeah.
Well, much respect. We really appreciate you coming on. Incredible career, and I feel really lucky that I get to talk to you very often and work with you. So we really appreciate you coming on here, man.
Well, thanks. I really appreciate it. I have to say, it's like I love your podcast. I actually listen.
Well, thank you.
I've got two. I mean, candidly, I do, when I'm on the treadmill or whatnot, I do listen to the podcast, and I think it's great to get the kernels of just really interesting tidbits that people bring to the show. Yeah. You feel like you get to a certain point in your career, you're always learning. And so thanks for doing this, because I think you are talking with great people in the business, and all of us can always learn more. So I'm sure pick up something new every week.
Appreciate that.
Thank you.
All right.
Thanks for listening to Keyed In with your hosts, Max and Brent, unlocking the minds of the industry's top real estate professionals. For more information on selling your home, find us online at KeyedInPodcast.com. Remember to subscribe to Keyed In on Apple Podcasts or wherever you like to listen to podcasts. Follow us on Instagram at Keyed In Podcast, at Rabin Max, and at Brent E. Jackson. And follow Max on TikTok at MaxwellRabin_properties.